Welcome everybody joining us today. My name is Olga Timanova at the Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform. The day of 694th day of the full-scale invasion into Ukraine. We are talking today with the spokesperson for the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine, Andriy Demchenko. Welcome, sir. Shall we begin with the situation at the Polish border? What's going on there? Well, as far as Polish-Ukrainian border is concerned, it has drawn a lot of attention for a long time now. We are talking about the 4 checkpoints, Ravarus, Yahivets, Shehini, and Yagodin. As of now, and of today, luckily enough, all these directions have been unblocked and the lorry traffic is intensified again. We have renewed the intensity that we had seen before the blockade. To remind you, on the 6th of December, the Shegini-Megiddo checkpoints were reopened, and 2 days ago, other 3 directions, about 16 o'clock at the Ravaruska and about 8 p.m. at the Yagodin checkpoint. To cite an example, at the time of the blockade that was instated in the Polish side of the border at the Yagodin checkpoints, the most intensified checkpoints, they would let through the fewest number of trucks in both directions. In contrast, as of yesterday, we have the indicator that more than 1,000 trucks have crossed the border. In total, thousands of vehicles have been crossing the border in both ways. Of course, the queues are still there. On the Ukrainian side, we've got the electronic queue, so the trucks don't have to be there near the border. The system will inform every single driver the time and place where they are able to cross the border. The intensity of passage is available online. As for the Polish side, as of this morning, the queue saw about 1,200 vehicles, mainly at the Shegini checkpoints. I will also like to say that the intensity that we are seeing today and that we recorded yesterday, the queues are there and the drivers will have to spare much less time as compared before the previous situation. Everyone understands that there were some preconditions for unblocking. The negotiations were run at different levels for days and weeks. Some agreements seem to have been reached. Are these agreements in place now? Are they effective? And how does it impact the State Border Guard Service? The Ministry of Infrastructure was in constant dialogue at the level of the ministers, engaging the participants of the blockade in search to try to de-escalate the situation. As for the steps taken, the queue at the Nizhyankovich checkpoints will now see the possibility for the trucks that are empty to go through. And a pilot project is that we have agreed on the following, that we will follow the electronic queue when the trucks will have to appear at the border physically and then be granted the transit rights. The trucks were able to go to the Ukrinform checkpoint, and at the Yagodin and Kraviets checkpoints have been added to the electronic queue, and there is a special line for the trucks to go through the checkpoints while they are empty. This country has been working for a long time to make sure that the Polish border is open for our hauliers, but we are now seeing the issues with Romania. What do we see there? Are there queues at the border? As far as I know, that part of the border has been blocked. Unfortunately positive, we have seen the partial disruptions in the passage into Romania. Today we are seeing 3 directions, which is one more as compared to yesterday. Starting with Saturday, the Porubna direction at the Ukrainian side and the Romanian side. This is the checkpoint called Siret, and the representatives of the agricultural sector of Romania, as a rule, they would start the blockade in midday until the evening. Then the Krasnoilsk at the Romanian side, we call the Sus checkpoint, have been added. These 2 directions, as of this morning, have been effectively blockaded 24 hours a day. The complications for the passage of the trucks is quite visible. When, as far as Krasnoilsk is concerned, only trucks, empty trucks, are allowed to go through. In the Porubna direction, of course, the trucks that have been loaded with consignments going both ways. Luckily enough, yesterday we recorded the fact that the Romanian side would allow trucks at the Porumba checkpoint about 10 vehicles per hour. Effectively, it means that complications are there, but there is some passage going on. Post 10:30 this morning in the territory of Romania, we had seen the blockade at the Ukrainian side. This is Yakova checkpoint. On the Romanian side, it's Siret checkpoint. At this point in time, we are seeing is that there is some passage from Romania into Ukraine. In contrast to that, there is no passage from Ukraine to Romania. This list of blockading countries, we sometimes see for Slovakia. As for the Slovakia and Hungary, I should add, is something that we saw paid a close attention to. Fortunately, those blockades didn't last long, especially at the Uzhhorod city and the Tisa checkpoints going to Hungary. Over the recent years, we have not recorded any blockades. The passage of trucks is quite intensive in both directions. Now, of course, we are seeing some queues in the territory of those countries bound to Ukraine. But we should understand that the queues have been caused by the actions in the Polish territory. Drivers and hauliers have been trying and are seeking ways to cross the border where the availability arises and where the intensified documentation of consignments is taking place. At the Uzhhorod checkpoints, we are having now more than 400 vehicles. In the Tisa territory in Ukraine, about 500 vehicles. Now the New Year season is over, and we can draw the conclusions about the passenger passage at those points. At the New Year and Christmas period, there was quite a dynamic passenger passage that was dramatically different from the relevant periods of 22nd, 23rd of December. In December, we recorded the increase of the passenger passage going up 20% as compared to November. A week before the 25th of December, about 750,000 persons have crossed the border, with the majority of them going from Ukraine. On the eve of the 23rd of December, there was a peak of passenger traffic at the level of 140,000 people crossing the border. A week before the New Year's Eve, the passenger passage was quite intensive, about 600,000 persons, which is lesser than the New Year period. But the dynamics is that we saw the increase in the outbound passages. For the whole week, the dynamics of the passenger passages was dominated by the outgoing persons from Ukraine. The passenger passage now is effectively not that high. In the past 24 hours, we saw 75,000, and the day before 64,000 persons crossing the border. With the passenger passage going down, what we are seeing that there are no effectively queues at the border. If we compare with the year 2023, in spite of all these dynamics, the general dynamic is that the traffic of passengers goes up. In 2023, about 35 million persons have crossed the border, and there is no prevalence of outbounding or inbound passengers. It's about 50-50 relations for the year of 2023. We have also seen the increase in the transportation passage of 23 in comparison to the year 2022. Have we seen with this increase of passenger passages the number of crimes increasing? Unfortunately, the attempts of illegal attempts to cross the border is going up. I can't tell you the figures now, but on a daily basis, the State Border Guard Service officers try to stop those who are using the fake documents, but at the same time, the green part of the state border. If we compare the statistics for 2023 and 2022, the tendency for the illegal crossings is going down. It perhaps is influenced by the weather, and the impact is that at some point in time, we recorded the decrease of the attempts to cross the border illegal in the green area. At the same time, the fake documents, the number of those has increased. It should be underlined that once we have identified persons with the fake documents, they are transferred to the responsibility of the national police because they are criminally liable. We have identified more than 1,300 fake documents that men would present to the officers in an attempt to cross the border. We've seen a lot of publications about the increase of the control procedures and checking procedures for the people who are liable for the call-up. What has changed here? We are seeing the number of attempts to use the fake documents, so the measures we are taking has been increased. We are checking everybody who are crossing the border out of Ukraine. Ukrainian men aged from 18 to 60 years old in the first place. This category of citizens are now seeing some restrictions for the wartime, but the State Border Guard Service officers are doing everything in compliance with the Ukrainian legislation. There are some norms that allow people to cross the border during the martial law. There have been no changes to that law. The categories that have been identified are still in place, and recently I would like to underline that we have seen no changes to that legislation, but because people are trying to use fake documents, it is up to the State Border Service to check everybody in due process and do it duly for the people to have relevant documents allowing them to cross the border. According to the rules laid down so far, apart from the people who are physically disabled or those accompanying disabled persons, the rules state that the border can be crossed by the people liable for the call-up during the mobilization. Again, to repeat, all men are bound to call up. They have to have the documents available if they have a right for the delay, they have to have a special stamp in their documents. If the state border guard officers have some suspicions, we do check every single person to make sure that people have enough substantiated documents to cross the border. Let us look at the situation on the other side of the border. The borders with Russia and Belarus, what's the dynamics there? As previously, these directions are very much different. The Belarusian direction, we are fortifying, engineering, fortifying these areas. It's been done by the State Border Guard Service and other components of the armed forces of Ukraine. Luckily enough, on the other side of the border, we don't see any attempts by Russia to invade our territory. You will remember that at some point in time, all the Russian units have been withdrawn from the Belarusian territory. And as the rotation would foresee, we don't see those rotations. But we are realizing what the danger is because Belarus is supporting the aggressor country. We remember the day of the beginning of the full-scale invasion when the Belarusian authorities opened the border to Ukraine. As far as the Russian border is concerned, the situation is different from that in the Belarusian. We are seeing constant shelling from their territory using different types of weapons, artillery, tanks, aviation, rifles, small arms. And since the beginning of the war, we have recorded more than 1,200 shellings of the Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv regions. The majority of those have been directed to Kharkiv region. Comparing with December of last year, we recorded more than 2,100 shellings from the Russian territory of the Ukrainian territory. The enemy is also trying to take advantage of the saboteur groups in those directions. The reconnaissance and groups are used everywhere. The threat is still there. We well remember the commencement of the year 2023 when the reconnaissance and subversive groups were most active in the Chernihiv region. Colleagues, questions from the floor? Marina Yashenko from Ukrinform. As far as the reconnaissance and the activities of the reconnaissance groups, what do we see there? Well, there is no regular dynamic that we might put down that they're working on a daily basis or every other day. The activities of the enemy reconnaissance and subversive groups is still there. Recently, they have been very active, are Sumy and Kharkiv oblasts. Friends, do you have more questions? There are no more questions from the floor. I have one, though. We have heard a lot of complaints about the Shlach category that allow people to cross the border illegally. What changes have we seen to beef up that system, and how that the system is being mis and abused? I informed you about the attempts to use fake documents. At the same time, we see that the goal of a trip of a person does not comply with the conditions, including the Shlach system that you have mentioned, that the road system said that a person can go abroad with the aim and goal to transfer goods, passengers, or humanitarian aid transportation. However, when we are checking the documents, what we see is that the circumstances are quite different. The goals of that person to leave Ukrainian territory is different, and we have that person registered in the road system, and there is some allowance for that and permits for him or her to go through. And sometimes we see that people don't have their driver's license, or if they do, those driver's licenses don't comply with the conditions. The rules are there. The state border guards are entitled to check the goal of a trip for people who are going in those two directions through the road system. And if the goal of the passage does not comply with the announced one, such a person will be refused to go through. Over the 2023 year, about 50,000 Ukrainians have been denied the right to cross the border. Some of them wouldn't have the documents, others could not confirm the goal of their trip. Some of them would lack the number of documents that would authorize them for crossing the border. The denial that we offer concern those people that have been using the road system. Thank you. To remind you, we've been talking to Andriy, the spokesperson for the Ukraine State Border Guards. About 30 minutes time, we'll be talking about the relations between Ukraine and Turkey. Will be talking to Vasil Bondar, the extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassador. Thank you very much, and thank you, the Defense Forces of Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to heroes.